I think we have started the crash that lots of people have seen coming. And once it digs in, it's going to be serious.
This week's specials with Miles Franklin Precious Metal Investments.
2022 Noah's Ark Silver Coins. 1 ounce coins for $3.75 over spot, and 1/4 ounce coins for $2.45 over melt.
Call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty and Finance. And back with us today is our good friend Bob Moriarty. Bob, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a real pleasure.
It's great to have you back. And one of the topics I'd really like to discuss is the new variant, because I know we talked about COVID last time and how it impacted the economy and all the shutdowns and all of that. But I think it's really interesting to really focus on, well, how is this all impacting the financial system? Because regardless of the truth of the matter of the virus, this new variant is having an impact on the financial system because it's having an impact on government and government policy. So your perspective on how the governments around the world are reacting to this new variant and how it's impacting the financial world.
When you're talking about the economic impact, it's like going back to the impact of 9/11, okay? If we had treated 9/11 as a terrorist attack that wasn't really a big deal, we wouldn't have had to go to war and spend, I think the total cost of war was about $7 trillion, and nobody was better off as a result. We overreacted. And this is interesting now because every government in the world is tending to overreact, and they're doing things that's like taking a pipe wrench to a Ferrari. Now, if you got a Ferrari and you need to tune it up, you're not going to do it with the pipe wrench. You're going to ruin the car. So the economic impact is catastrophic. And a lot of people are blaming the crash on Friday and on today on Omicron. But in fact, the stock market's been a balloon running around looking for a pin. So the variation has very little to do with the stock market. The stock market's going to crash anyway. But the economic impact of countries shutting down, trade shutting down, Russia has cut off gas supplies to Europe. There's some really terrible things happening right now, most of which is stupid.
No, you mentioned how the stock market is a balloon run around to find a pin. I think that's such a good explanation or a good analogy for what we see right now. What are some of the key reasons you think that the stock market is in a bubble right now?
Okay, I'm a contrarian. I look for excess behavior either on the upside or on the downside. And that's when you're going to get a turn. When everybody's optimistic, the market's going to go down. When everybody's pessimistic, the market's going to go up. And we have exceeded bullishness in the number of options, in the shares traded in March and debt. The markets have gone absolutely, it's like they're on speed. And that's a very dangerous thing. The markets are totally disconnected from the economy.
And why do you think that is, that the markets are disconnected from the economy?
We've poured money into the economy. We've got this bizarre situation in the mining business where mining companies are spending 6 to 8 months to get assays because the government's paying people to stay home and drink beer on the couch. And there's no particular reason for them to go to work because they can make more money off the government. But the problem is the government doesn't have any money, which means that taxpayers subsidize people to stay at home and not work. And the mining companies that desperately need assays on a timely basis are not getting the assays. They don't know where they're drilling. They don't know how they're drilling. and it's catastrophic for the mining industry, but it's catastrophic for employment. Now, one of the really strange things that's happened is a lot of people who are either laid off or working from home looked around and said, I never liked my job anyway. I think I'll quit. Okay. So you have this bizarre situation with sky-high unemployment, but you can't hire people. We have the worst of all possible worlds.
Now, the interesting thing is you mentioned how, there's been a lot of money pumped into the system by the Fed. And we just recently got the announcement last week that they are reducing the amount of money that they're going to be pumping into the economy. Your perspective on this and why the stock market didn't crash, because we actually did see a rally when we heard the Fed announcement.
We had a temporary rally, but if you looked at what the market did Friday and what it's doing today, I think we have started the crash that lots of people have seen coming. And once it digs in, it's going to be serious. Most people under the age of 50 have never seen a bear market. And a bear market is absolutely brutal, with stocks going down day after day after day after day. As I said a little earlier, the stock market is totally disconnected to the economy, and the economy is totally disconnected to the amount of money that Fed's pumping in. You could pour $100 bills on a fire, and it'll make the fire burn brighter, but you're also destroying a lot of money at the same time. And that's exactly what the Fed has done. The distortions in our economic system are really staggering. Some things I'll just casually mention: energy, cost of gas, not gasoline, but the cost of natural gas in Europe has gone up tenfold in the last year, and the cost of energy has gone up fourfold. And that's the kind of, you cannot have that kind of distortion in an economy without doing serious damage to the marginal businesses that weren't making money before.
Are you expecting this then to be kind of just a long-term grinding down of the market, or are we going to see a sudden crash?
I think it'll start with a sudden crash, as in 1929. But between September of 1929 and July of 1932, the stock market declined 89%. In late October 28th of 1929, we did have a crash, but that's just start. So the market going down 600 points today, that's just start.
Your perspective then, is it because of the Fed's decision that really was the pin that really popped the bubble? Or your perspective on that, what is actually causing this to happen?
If you have ever seen a child play with soap bubbles in a park, okay, they've got a jar of soap and they've got this little thing with circles, and they dip it into the soap bubbles and they bring it out and they blow into it, and there are thousands of little bubbles created, and each of them eventually bursts. Now, what causes it to burst is absolutely meaningless. It is the act of blowing the bubble that guarantees that eventually it's going to burst.
I think that's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter what pops the bubble, because it's going to pop eventually. It's that it is a bubble to begin with. And your perspective then on how precious metals are going to react to this, because I know in the past when we've seen a downturn in the stock market, initially precious metals actually sell off.
Strange enough, and that's a good analogy, and that could well happen. But there's two things I want you to think about. Somebody named Jason from Sentiment Indicator or Sentiment, somebody has done a report, and he looked at the number of gold stocks that were trading above their 200-day moving average. And his statistics show that over the last 6 years, anytime it dropped below 10%, you would have a bottom, and the market would go up 25% the next 3 months and go up about 80% the next year. I happen to think, it's just opinion, I think we're in the same place that we were in December of 2015, and the gold stocks actually kept declining into January of 2016, and then had this incredible rally. If you look at the volume of junior mining stocks and you look at the chat boards, everybody's so discouraged and they're convinced they're never going to go up again. But all of the investment money has gone into Tesla, it's gone into Bitcoin, and into the general stock market. And everything works in waves. You go up and you go down. So gold and gold shares have been going down. Now I think they're going to go up.
I'm just thinking of, for example, right at the COVID pandemic in 2020 around March. And then if you look also at the 2008 crash, we saw gold and silver fall. But actually, if you just go a year or two after that, you see a tremendous rally. And for COVID, it wasn't even a year or two. It was a few months, and silver was back up to $30 from its low at about 11, I believe, in March. So yeah, I mean, your perspective on that, it seems like what you're saying is even if they do have a larger pullback, we're going to make that up real quickly.
Not only make it up, you're going to make it up in spades. That's a good analogy. Now, I had been forecasting a crash as early as September, October of 2019. And in September, the Fed announced the reverse repos. They just hurled money in the system. So the Fed absolutely understood that bad things were going to come. And in January and in February of 2020, I was saying, hey, wait a minute, we're going to have a crash. You've been warned. There's going to be bad things coming. Get prepared for it. I was absolutely adamant that we were going to have a crash. Now, it's always nice to believe that narratives cause crashes, but that's absolutely not true. A narrative follows price. If the stock market goes up 10,000 points today, somebody's going to say, well, the stock market went up because Powell. It's all rubbish, okay? It moves in a cycle of its own. But if you go back to March of 2020, silver got below 12. I think it got to 1180, 1170, something like that. It seems to me that it was absolutely absurd. Lots of people were squawking, well, I've been to my coin dealer and he won't sell coins to me for $12. But of course, he had been paying 20 for them a week before. I looked at it and said, this is an incredible opportunity. So I was buying silver ETFs, which I've never bought before, below $12. And silver went from 12 to nearly 30 in about 7 months. A crash is not a disaster. It's an opportunity if you're prepared for it. And I say in my books, and I try to get this point across to people, that everything goes up and everything goes down, and you've got to be prepared for things to go down. And rather than be whining about, oh my God, my stock's down so much, you should be looking and saying, wait a minute, when 90% of stocks are below their 200-day moving average, it means they're going to gain 25% the next 3 months. It's an opportunity if you look at it as an opportunity.
I remember last time we had you on and you shared some of the wisdom that is so much, no one thinks about it, and how simple it is of, you look at a stock when it's down, that's when it's undervalued. That's all you need to know. You don't need to know anything else. So, and for example, you talked about Bitcoin, how, if everyone's talking about it, it's not the time to jump in. And that's all you need to know. You don't even need to know the fundamentals behind the stocks. You just have to look at the chart and see, is it down or is it up? And is everyone talking about it?
Well, it really is that simple. And that's what drives people crazy. But they've been surrounded by 200 different people saying this causes it, this causes it, this Because no, it's not. Stocks are either cheap or they're expensive. Now, if nothing has changed except the price, you should be a buyer. There's one particular stock, I'm not going to identify it, but it's a stock that I like a lot that has solid underpinnings that got its low at 7 cents a week ago. So I bought it. And it went up to 8 cents, which is a 14% climb in one day. And it's back to 6.5 cents today, which is an all-time low. So I put an order in to buy at 6.5 cents. Nothing has changed fundamentally except the price. Now, when you go into your Cadillac dealer and your Cadillac dealer says, well, we got too many cars, and I'll give you 25% off. Most investors would say, God, I don't want to buy that. The price is going down. I want to wait until the price is going up, which, of course, is a very stupid thing to do.
Now, if we look at what is coming, I know last time you had you on, you said that we're going to be entering one of the greatest financial crises we've seen. You've said today that this stock market crash has already started. What are some words of wisdom you'd like to share of how do people prepare for this?
Strange enough, and since I need the money and I make so much money off my books, I'm going to say they really should read my books. I mean, for $5 or $10 total, you can get a lot of advice that's valuable advice. I mean, I listen to 100 different people, and 2 or 3 of them can actually make money for you. Most people specialize in telling people what they want to hear, and I don't do that. I keep things really simple, and I give you things that you can use to make money. When you are in a crash like we're in, just starting now, survival is victory. Obviously, you want to be in real assets. I'm a big believer in gold and silver, but energy, lithium, graphite, real substance. You want to get away from the paper assets because the paper assets are going to disappear. Everything in life, every asset is either real or it's fictional. If you got a $10 billion treasury note, at its heart, it is a piece of paper. And it can go back to its value as a piece of paper. If you got fractional shares in a solid producing enterprise, that is something that has real value. But it is absolutely not a time to be investing in cryptocurrencies. At the low in 2000, I think the low is, or not the low, the first high of the cryptocurrencies was in 2018, December 2018, I think. There were about 1,500 cryptocurrencies. There are over 9,000 today. Now, if you lived in New York City and there were 9,000 ice cream parlors, none of them would make any money. They couldn't because there's too much competition. Cryptocurrencies have turned into electronic beanie babies, and they're going to regress to their real value very shortly.
Now, before we let you go, one last topic I'd like to touch on is how geopolitics is going to impact this financial crash. I know we're seeing, conflicts in Ukraine right now. Your perspective on that, how is that going to impact the financial system in the U.S. and around the world?
Well, it could impact it catastrophically. We could be in World War III in a week or two. And I'm absolutely sincere about that. I spent 6 years in the Marine Corps, almost 2 years in Vietnam. I don't particularly like war. The United States, for some reason, a small group of neocons are determined to destroy the United States, and they're going to do it by dragging the United States into a war with either Russia or China, or both at the same time. Now, we just got thrown out of Afghanistan after a 20-year war. When you have been beat that badly by a bunch of goat herders, you should not be looking to get into another fight. Putin has made it crystal clear that NATO, Ukraine joining NATO would be a line in the sand that he absolutely will not tolerate. He has Russian forces on the border, and he has said, if you move equipment and personnel into Ukraine or try to make Ukraine part of NATO, we're going to war. I personally would not mess with Putin. He's doing exactly the same thing that John Kennedy did with the Russians in 1962 in the Cuban crisis. It was not tolerable for the United States to have Russian nuclear weapons in Cuba that was about 15 minutes away from Washington. And Putin has made it clear that he's not going to allow nuclear weapons 5 minutes away from Moscow. When you look at how wars start, it's amazing how stupid they are. World War I was an accident. There wasn't anybody that was absolutely guilty, but there wasn't anybody who was absolutely innocent. Everyone involved, the French, the Germans, the Serbians, the Americans, the British, Austrians, Russians, everyone turned stupid at the same time. I'll tell you, if we have World War III and civilization ending, I'm totally against it.
Well, definitely. I think we'd all be against that. And I guess with respect to what's happening right now, I mean, if we don't see like an end of the world scenario with Ukraine, how do you see this playing out in impacting maybe the average person in the U.S.?
The wonderful thing is sometimes a crisis gives you an opportunity to sober up. The United States is moving 2 divisions of tanks towards Ukraine. I would hope that the EU, that the other members of NATO would talk to each other and say, do we really want a world war over Ukraine when the United States sponsored a coup d'etat and threw out the democratically elected government? If people really thought about it, they'd say a nuclear war is a really bad idea. But it's a question of will they think about it or not? And the answer is, I don't know.
Well, Bob Moriarty, we really appreciate your time and insights today. Before we let you go, I'll just point our viewers to the description of this video. They'll find the links to your books. Any last thoughts you'd like to add? And do you want to remind our viewers also where they can find you online?
They can find me on 321gold.com. They could find my books on Amazon. And I will say, I don't think I'm aware of any other financial books that put so much in at low cost. And I think people will find them of substantial value. We're in either the greatest opportunity in history or we're at the end of history. And I'm not sure what's going to happen, but it's a great time to be an investor.
Once again, Bob, we really appreciate your insights. Thank you so much for joining us today. Merry Christmas and God bless.
Thank you very much, Elijah. It's been a great pleasure.
This is Dunnigan Kaiser, founder of Liberty and Finance. I'm now a licensed gold and silver broker for Miles Franklin. Call me directly for the physical gold and silver that you need at the best price with personalized private service from one of the oldest and best companies in the business. 31 years strong, A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, 0 complaints, licensed and bonded for physical delivery, vault storage, or precious metals IRAs. Excellent prices, privacy, and confidentiality. Pay by check, money order, ACH, bank wire, or Bitcoin. Satisfaction guaranteed. For fastest service, just call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 888-81-LIBERTY. And either I or one of my sons and fellow brokers will call you back as soon as we can and understand your needs.